Welcome to a character breakdown of Toph, and we'll also be going over what a Mary Sue is. First of all, Toph is, well, Toph Beifen from the Avatar: The Last Airbender series. Commonly miscategorized as a children's show, it's a very family-friendly animated series, and honestly, an adult can absolutely enjoy this series as well. Remember, just because it's animated does not mean it's for children. The entire market of hentai has proved that very well. Now, you might be wondering why I'm combining a video about Toph Beifen with one about Mary Sue's. Well, that's because some dude on the internet decided he'd get on Twitter and make an ass of himself. Or herself, I honestly don't remember. This person decided to post several pictures of Toph Beifen and say that if this character had come out today, there'd be a bunch of people accusing her of being a Mary Sue. This was obviously in reference to, and they clarified, Rey from the Star Wars sequel trilogy. Now, I'm not going to put this person's Twitter up here, and I'm not going to tell you who said it or give you an exact quote because this person got fucking dragged, and they deserve to, but at a certain point, it kinda just becomes unfair to bring any more attention to them. But because I love me a good PSA, I decided that in addition to breaking down the wonderful bits of Toph's character, we'd also go over a quick public service announcement of what a Mary Sue is. Contrary to popular belief, a Mary Sue is not an obscenely powerful character. It is not an overpowered character. A Mary Sue is essentially the writer's pet character. It is the character that the writer has decided is going to win, and they don't really care about justifying that in any way. They have decided that this character is the ultimate in good and right, and anyone who says otherwise is wrong and evil. Or stupid. Mary Sue characters always succeed. They don't have to be the most powerful character. In fact, sometimes the Mary Sue is an incredibly weak character who just always succeeds anyway through some other thing that they are good at. Plot conveniences will always drop something into their wheelhouse, making the fight about what they can do and not what the enemy can. Characters who agree with her are viewed as the smart or the good characters. Characters who disagree are stupid or evil. Every decision they make is the right one, and they always succeed in the end and always succeed all the way throughout. And if by some unimaginable circumstances they do fail, it will never be due to their own fault. It will always be due to someone else who didn't have enough faith in them. And any flaws that a Mary Sue or a Gary Stu might have will always be some non-problem like a I care too much issue. Or said flaw will be framed in a way that it is actually a massive boon or help to them in some way. And I'm all for a disabilities being used to your advantage story, but that's not what we're talking about here. This is why I don't consider Korra a Mary Sue. Korra absolutely got bodied by borderline everyone, and I never understood people listing her like she was some super overpowered character because she could bend a tiny bit of 3 elements at 5. Aang was probably well on his way to learning airbending at 5. He lived with monks. And then this 12-year-old who mastered airbending, and yes, he was a master because you don't get the tattoos until you're a master, proceeded to master 3 other elements over the course of around 9 months. Korra took until she was 17 to get close to mastering 3 elements, and I wouldn't necessarily consider her a master of 4 elements until she was around 21. She also got her ass handed to her regularly by a whole bunch of random nobodies, as well as the main villains, even descending into PTSD, and lost so hard that she lost her connection to all the past avatars along the way, and permanently scarred the avatar's name. People were constantly against her from the get-go, and they were right to, because the way she was brought up by the White Lotus had led her to become a relatively uselessly arrogant avatar. She had a lot of major character flaws that were very clearly laid out as actual character flaws. Anyone who looked at the first few seasons and said, look how strong and forceful she is, what an empowering character, clearly didn't watch the rest of the series. Because those were some of her greatest downfalls that led to the worst results in the history of the Avatar. Only when humbled and humiliated into humility did she ever become a character worth caring about. As far as I'm aware, there is no Mary Sue character in any of the Avatar series. And it certainly isn't Toph. Toph Beifen was not an overpowered character. First of all, she had a rather major, serious problem. She could not see. She was blind. And while she did use that to her advantage in developing the seismic sense ability of earthbending, that doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't a weakness. She still had a lot of weaknesses because of it. While she often had the ability to block incoming attacks because she saw the movement the enemy made and therefore could figure out what they were doing, She was often blindsided by grabs from angles she couldn't have seen, or by people who had thrown a grab from very far away, and therefore she didn't know where it was exactly going to be. She got grabbed from behind in Ba Sing Se because she couldn't see that particular attack coming. She had to have someone point out where the airships were because she couldn't actually get an idea of where they were. While she's on an airship, she can't actually tell where anything is.
That's a lot of fire, isn't it?
In the desert, she lost Appa, not because she couldn't fight back against them, but because she didn't know where they were. She threw some really powerful attacks, and had she actually known where the enemy was amidst all the sand, she probably could have defeated them quickly and then grabbed the library again. But she couldn't do that because she didn't know where they were. So she was forced to make a choice between saving Appa and holding the library in place. She is definitely a prodigy who developed a lot of skill at a very, very young age, but the only reason she got so powerful at a young age is because the Earth was the only thing she had any real connection to. In fact, she regularly made decisions that were just flat out bad decisions. She drew attention to them in the Fire Nation with her cons.
I found something that you're not gonna like.
Well, it sounds like a sheet of paper, but I guess you're referring to what's on the sheet of paper.
It's a wanted poster of you.
Her intense aversion to following the rules no doubt caused a lot of problems in Ba Sing Se and probably increased the security on them. Toph had her strengths, but she had a lot of weaknesses. So Toph isn't a Mary Sue because she was often in the wrong, she made rash decisions, people who disagreed with her were not in the wrong for doing so, and she did not always succeed. But away from the Mary Sue topic, her as a character I thought was incredibly compelling. Not only was her entire backstory incredibly believable, with everyone just assuming she couldn't do anything when she could. She had that ability. And her rising rebellion against a parent who is downright suffocating was really well done. It was believable. This is how someone would act, and while confronting them might have been an effective way to move forward, you must remember she was still a child. After lying to her parents for years, she finally ends up with their secret out in the open, and the first thing she does is run away. And as she progressed as a character, truly coming to terms with the fact that they were entering a war, and it's entirely possible that she's not going home, that a lot of people aren't going home, that people are dying out here. She begins to look back at her life and the decisions she's made and starts to have regrets. These were never viewed as a bad thing. This was allowing her to become vulnerable in ways that she never allowed herself to be before, because she doesn't like the projected persona of vulnerable.
I know what you're thinking. I look like I can't handle being by myself.
I wasn't thinking that.
You wouldn't even let me pour my own cup of tea.
I poured your tea because I wanted to, and for no other reason.
People see me and think I'm weak. They want to take care of me, but I can take care of myself by myself.
She hates being viewed as vulnerable. That's why she has such a face-forward, head-to-the-stone style of interacting. And this head-on application was part of what helped her become such a great earthbender, because it's exactly how you should approach earthbending. But she started to regret how she had left her parents, how she had left things with them, and she recruits Katara to write a letter back to them. She wanted to make amends. And her character came a very long way in maturity and growing up into an adult, even though she wasn't actually an adult. But as a person, she matured quite a lot. Well beyond her years, I'd say. And this character progression didn't just stop there. She became incredibly reflective later on in life in Legend of Korra, looking back at how she treated things, how she treated people, and even the mistakes that she made along the way, and even taking the time to look at what she had done with her children and how she raised them, and how maybe going stark the other side away from how her parents raised her wasn't the right way to go about it. She also eventually grew into a more spiritually connected side of earthbending that she had completely ignored before because it would require opening yourself up, and it wasn't something she did. So while you see the vestiges of the start of her beginning to come to terms with opening up and being a better person early on in the Last Airbender series, that progression was carried on into Legend of Korra. There were probably some hiccups along the way that we simply didn't see. Mainly, I note this because she didn't seem to have progressed as quickly as she might have during the war. But during the war, she had to advance incredibly quickly to where she was. She had to mature, she had to grow up fast. If you don't grow up fast in a war, you die. But overall, I can't actually think of any notes that I didn't like about this character. I would never call her a Mary Sue. I would never consider her overpowered. In fact, I wouldn't even consider Korra to be a Mary Sue. I would, however, consider all of these points I've listed and the progression, the regrets, the strengths and weaknesses, the missteps and mistakes that they made along the way to be vital characterizations that set them apart from actual Mary Sue characters like Rey Skywalker or Captain Marvel. They acquire power without putting in a lot of effort. Everything they suggest is immediately correct. People who disagree with them are wrong or stupid, and they are always on the right side right from the start. And before anyone brings up that Captain Marvel was technically on the wrong side, no, she wasn't. She was on the wrong team, but her mentality was always on the right side. She had been lied to. That isn't a mistake on her part. That wasn't her believing it. In fact, once she actually met the opponents that turned out not to be all that bad, she switched sides almost immediately and just threw away the teaching she had been given so far because she already didn't agree with the teaching she was being given in the first place. Toph was an exceptionally well-rounded character who had an outer need of getting away and becoming her own person and an inner need of maturing, which she was never going to do in her current situation because she was repressing her real self. She was an out-of-control child who needed to grow up, and she got exactly that in her quest to gain individuality. Anyway, like, share, follow, comment, subscribe, and all those things that help with the algorithm. Let me know if you're interested in character breakdowns, or if you want to see some other type of video, let me know about that in the comments. Or if you're upset that I've either labeled Rey/Captain Marvel as Mary Sue's and dared to suggest that Korra is not, or if you're one incredibly insane person on Twitter who actually thinks that Toph is one, feel free to also go down to the comments and, you know, be entertainingly angry.
There it is! That's what it will sound like when one of you spots it.